24 hours, one day. You can cross Florence listening to time, to the rhythm of art. It can be seen hearing the sound that has crafted marble, glass, silk and iron through the centuries. Materials for shaping the masterpieces that populate the city's streets and piazzas. An open-air museum. These are stones that speak, telling the story of a time in which Masaccio and Botticelli, Giotto and Beato Angelico, Brunelleschi and Michelangelo were called to give form to absolute legends, and who today observe indifferently the passage of time. A walk around the quarters of the Florentine city means giving yourself up to the tranquility of art, and the discovery or rediscovery of architectures, styles and activities that give life not just to objects, but to that image of a city that the whole world loves.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Rice. May I help you? For tomorrow, and do you know what time you think to be in Milano? After lunch is around 2 p.m., 1 p.m.
Florence is the home of the art of glassmaking. In the shops of craftsmen, in respect of an ancient tradition unchanged by the passing of time. To admire it means to appreciate the sinuous play of the immense Liberty skylines of the prestigious hotels and the sacred images of the multi-hued stained glass windows of the Duomo, or the futuristic geometries sheltering the new high-speed railway station.
And it would give you an immediate point of reference.
Poised between Norman Foster, Paolo Uccello and Donatello, Florence works for the present and at the same time perpetuates its history. To open the doors of the Opificio delle Pietre Dure makes it possible to learn the history of this centuries-old production activity, established by Ferdinand I of the Medici in 1588. The unique knowledge of the material and constant research are applied to each restoration of stonework and artifacts, of mosaics, of bronze masterpieces in all shapes and sizes, the whole emphasized by the resounding symphony of chisels, computers and lasers. The rooms of the Opificio marry educational training with complex interventions. The same laboratory works on masterpieces of inestimable value, restoring legends rather than statues, such as Michelangelo's David, which has let us look on with respect and admiration for 500 years. To pass within the doors of its restoration laboratories at the Fortezza da Basso means understanding the wear and tear of time while listening to the sound of conservation, protection, and to be able to admire the hands that work on the masterpieces of mankind, such as Giotto's crucifix from the Church of Ognissanti. The signs of material and color become the white of the statuary marble of Michelangelo's Cappelle Medici, but also the green of the Chianti Hills and the red of the terracotta of Impruneta. A seesaw of images and fragrances like a temporal maze. In the medieval festival for the opening of the furnaces, Dante, food, fire and clay all meld into one.
O Tosco, che per la città del fuoco vivo tembrai così parlando onesto. La tua loquela ti fa manifesto di quella nobile patria natio alla quale forse fui troppo molesto.
In the furnace, where the flames burn fiercer, temperatures reach baking point. In the room beyond, the Divine Comedy is recited, while in the kitchen, tradition is upheld by preparing and serving a spicy dish, peposo.
Ed è come avesse l'inferno in grandi spicchi, l'una e l'altra fiata, ma i vostri una cosa ben bella.
Life here is a jigsaw, the alternation of seasons and activities, clay alongside vines and olive trees, and terracotta with olive oil and wine. Olive oil and wine. Productions whose nobility has always rhymed with earth and meadows in flower, and the colours of which have always been akin to amber and ruby. The fertile Florentine hills offer excellent vintages and harvests, expertly transformed by the noble wineries and by the prestigious and selected oil makers. And if the air breathed in the vineyards and among the olive groves is that of a noble lineage, in the city a taste of the popular atmosphere, singularly Florentine, can be savoured in the San Lorenzo marketplace. Here, under the glass facades of Giuseppe Mengoni, the market has kept a watchful eye on the quarter since 1874. A market loved since time remembered, and that can be best described by an illustrious Florentine. There's nothing I like more than the rows of market barrows laden with cheap rolls of cloth, servants' soap bars and braziers crowded around the Cappelle Medici, as the crow flies just a few meters from that present eternity.
State attenti al comando!
That present eternity that is part of the citizens' DNA.
Gridate con me! Viva Firenze!
The herald of the Signoria with his proclamations and the groups of musicians and flag bearers inaugurate modern football games and recall that old medieval ancestor called historic Florentine football, played or rather fought in costume in 3 match events in the month of June since the 1400s. The present eternity can be admired in the architecture and art of a unique city, the result of the knowledge that belonged to painters, sculptors and urban planners, but also in the artisan hands of skilled stonecutters, engravers, glassmakers, weavers, which is perpetuated in the tools and workplaces, unchanging and almost indifferent to the march of time. In Florence, each passion has its own artisan. Two strides away from the Duomo, in a laboratory, expert hands pass down a passion from father to son, true dynasties of stonecutters, the least known artists of them all. Here, perfect copies of the statues and columns of the nearby Duomo are crafted, temporary replacements for originals taken away to be restored. Far from the noise and bustle of the town centre, in the intimacy of a laboratory of marked shadows, a passion becomes art. It is the pleasure of carving wood, of sculpting and smoothing and shaping it into the masterpieces that enhance noble houses the world over. A passion and art that won the honour and the onus of responsibility in the project to restore the great halls and rooms of the Kremlin in Moscow. Plaster and enamel are mixed in chromatic alchemies. These are the ingredients of the art of scagliola. Since the 1700s, the famous works of the Renaissance have been reproduced, accurately sculpted on stone tables and doors. This is high craftsmanship, which continues the historic local love of stonework and art, a passion that blossomed at the height of the Medici era and which Florence continues to export today throughout the world. In the historic quarter of San Frediano, behind a wrought iron gate dating back to 1786, the Antico Settificio Fiorentino hides. The skilled handiwork of a few selected master weavers is underscored by the sound of the ancient looms. Fascinating and unique tools that have been producing their fruit of precious textiles in a myriad of hues and the lightest of pure silk and linen fabrics for more than 200 years. Since the 1700s, precious yarns are still dyed by hand, giving body to the wefts and warps that will soon play the roles of those same damasks, brocades, lampasses and taffeta of always. The elegant boutiques of Florence are also the laboratories of alchemists, such as the Officina of Santa Maria Novella, founded by the Dominican monks. Since 1221, herbs, roots and flowers have been transformed into perfumed waters and essences, balsams and liqueurs, a potpourri with a unique fragrance. In the Florence of the present, the most cutting-edge scenarios of the avant-garde and leisure time can be found. Places where clothing, books, music and fragrances live together, while happy hour has become a rite, a ceremony that attracts lifestyles and trends. Outside the fashion boutiques, the concept stores, away from the perception of trends, in a museum that is unique. Sitting on the hill of Montughi is the Museo Stibert, where the most extraordinary collection of medieval armor in the world can be viewed by the public in the magnificent hall known as the Salone della Cavalcata. This homage to ancient rituals, these suits of armor and costumes may lead us to the celebration of theatre. In a city that is both the cradle and treasure chest of artistic and cultural masterpieces, music cannot be left out.
Senti, dopo io vengo qui a mettere le perle.
Allora c'è più la vita quella signora.
Right here in Florence, at the end of the 1500s, the Italian opera was born. Those operas that later would bear the signatures of Monteverdi and Rossini, Donizetti and Bellini, Verdi and Puccini. The same operas that continue to be celebrated today in the city's Teatro Comunale. Here in the heart of the Maggio Musicale Fiorentino, the conductors of orchestras, the voices of singers and the notes of musicians perform and are acclaimed. For May, read music. Since 1933, a month of concerts, operas and ballets commingle in a festival famous throughout the world. But operas, choreographers and chamber musicians set Florence alive each night of the year. From the Teatro Comunale to the Teatro della Pergola, a true confection of the 1600s, a theatre that itself has become a museum. While the curtains open to the show, below stage is the home of technical tools from another era, witnesses to the productions of the past, and a centuries-old scale model, together making a beautiful display of their own, history on display. Talking about fashion is a bit like talking about Florence. The artisan is transformed into a designer and the shops into boutiques and showrooms. Impeccable cuts, yarns and leathers of the first order, exclusive footwear and accessories are the language of the true connoisseurs of Italian fashion. An industry that owes much to the genius of many Florentine designers. "24 hours, one day, from sunrise to sunset and beyond. One way that the flavor of Florence can be savored and appreciated."